Davis, you have the most wonderful Sunday music team and morning team. And David, I can't believe I've spoken to you twice this week and you didn't tell me that you had been elected as the senior minister. Boy, can you keep a secret. But I am so blessed to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. It seems almost surreal to be talking about fear with the current situations and conditions in the Ukraine. The contrast between the Ukrainian experience and the Sacramento and David's experience couldn't be much greater. I've been watching the news like one would watch a train wreck, with horror and fascination and great sadness. And then I remember that the event I'm watching is a call for prayer. It's a call for love. And so I sit what Emma Curtis Hopkins called the high watch. It's where one looks for the light, sees the light, and nurtures the light that is before them. So I want to take a moment of silence for us to see the light in the Ukrainian people, to see the light in the Russian soldiers, to see the light in the world leaders grappling with this challenge, and to trust this light to show us the way to peace. To trust the light that is within everyone to show us the way to peace. Thank you. My title today is Fear, Friend or Foe, and as usual with me, it's a trick question. Fear can be either our friend or a foe, but what it always does is tell us the truth. Now, there are two kinds of fear. I'm going to call them type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is physical fear, like what the Ukrainian and the Russian soldiers are feeling. It's what an antelope feels when it sees the lion. It's what you or I feel when we're in the big, dark parking garage and this creepy stranger walks towards us. And we know type 1 fear when we feel the 3 F's of adrenaline: fight, flight, or freeze. And this is an evolutionary imperative designed to keep us alive. It's up there with the big 3: food, shelter, and reproduction. It's part of nature's design for species survival. Now, this need for an all-out response is rare for most of us in our everyday middle-class lives here in Sacramento and Davis. But the physiological and the biological response lives on in our bodies, and we can find ourselves responding out of proportion to situations. What we deal mostly with is what I call type 2 fear. Think of it as type 1's more civilized younger sibling. Rather than being a primal physical survival mechanism, it's a psychological or ego defense mechanism. It's like the robot in the old Lost in Space, the one that said, "Danger, danger, Will Robinson." And it's confusing because our body can react or overreact as if our life has been threatened, when it's really only our ego sense of self that has been threatened. And by that, I mean the collection of beliefs and values that have solidified into our worldview and our beliefs about our place in that world order. But we do have real physical dangers in our world, so I want to, at least briefly, address this type of fear. Several years ago, Reverend Rafe Ellis, now the senior minister of the Foothills CSL in Grass Valley, gave a workshop titled Fall in Love with Fear. It was fabulous. And I want to quote from the flyer he created for that workshop. He said, "Fear never lies to us, never. It communicates with laser accuracy, alerting us to a viable threat to our physical, mental, or emotional well-being. Or it reveals exactly what is operating in our beliefs, and it never lies. Reverend Rafe went on to present a systematic approach to fear that I have modified and would like to share with you because I think it's eminently practical. So step 1 is assess your fear. The simplest and most often overlooked response is to notice that you are afraid. Admit it. Own it. Don't say, such and such out there is scaring me. That places you in the position of a victim being acted upon by the object of your fear. It keeps your attention away from you and inhibits your ability to respond. When I own my own emotional state, it makes taking action much, much easier. I literally can get back into my body and mind. Next is breathe. Breathing is always a good thing. Remember to breathe. Taking control of our breathing settles both the mind and the body. It turns down the volume and short circuits the adrenaline response. Now you can actually assess the situation. What is really going on? Is there an actual or potential physical threat? If there is an actual threat, prioritize your safety and well-being. So if there's an obvious physical threat, move to safety. Get help. I'm going to presume that if you are in an imminent, physically dangerous situation, you have enough sense to get away and get someplace else, to then call someone to help you deal with any trauma related to your experience. Enough said. The threat, however, may be less obvious, more subtle, more of a warning. So pay attention and be guided by the wisdom of your past experience or general knowledge. When my daughter was about probably 14 or 15, she came home one day and she was going to Mira Loma High School and riding the bus there back and forth by herself every day. And if that doesn't raise fear in parents, putting their darling daughters and sons on a public bus system, I don't know what does. But she came home and she was talking about being in a convenience store. And the guy behind her in line was standing too close. So she stood up, turned around and said to him, "You're standing too close. Back off." And the guy went, oh, sorry, and backed off. She trusted her own inner wisdom, that little voice that spoke to her and acted upon it. Don't gaslight yourself when you hear that little voice. Trust yourself, especially in the moment. You can think and analyze later. Your safety is more important than someone else's feelings. Women have been raised to ignore their intuition and to be polite. We gaslight ourselves and allow others to gaslight us because heaven knows we should never hurt anyone's feelings. Not true. Trust yourself. Before I move on to a type 2 fear, I want to be clear why I've spent time dealing with type 1. In New Thought, we don't talk about type 1 fear much, yet all of us have experienced some level of physical threat or actual physical trauma. It seemed disingenuous, disrespectful, and downright dangerous to pretend it does not exist. It has also helped me to be clear about the difference between the two types of fear so that I can get past the primitive adrenaline rush and do the inner work that type 2 fear requires. So once I've assessed the situation and realized that I'm not about to be eaten by the proverbial lion, then it's probably my sense of self that is being threatened. And this is no small thing. I would say that type 2 fear is the primary cause of the social unrest in this country. It's the primary motivator of the extreme polarization that is our current political and public life. It's also a primary disruptor of our personal lives and personal relationships. So it's important to know where this fear comes from and why we react so strongly. Type 2 fear is a direct result of us coming into this world naked, fragile, and vulnerable. We're at the mercy of our parents and family. So how do we survive? We shape ourselves to our environment, whether it's nurturing or not. If it is a nurturing environment, then the shaping is mutual. If it's not, then we work with what we have. We become what we need to in order to fit in and thrive where we are. Experience by experience, lesson by lesson, we build an ego. We build a personality whereby we can pass as a human being that belongs to the tribe. Now this is complicated because as we are learning and making decisions, making choices, mom wants us to act this way, dad values something else. Siblings have their own need and rivalries. School and culture have their models and expectations. We are also, in all of this, growing physically, emotionally, psychologically, and cognitively. And so, at 16 or 18 or 20, we leap or are pushed out of the nest and into the world we go, full of incomplete information and conflicting beliefs. Right? Anyone relate to this? It is our ego, designed by us personally, that has the job to protect us as we leap into this world, to watch for anything that might threaten our sense of who we are and how the world works. Note, at this point in our development, we think the ego is who we are. We are pretty clueless that it is an artificial, though valuable construct. So we learn as we go. If you are afraid or suddenly very angry and there's no imminent physical danger, chances are that what is being threatened is your sense of self, your values and beliefs about who you are, or your worldview, how you think the world should work, the rules of life, so to speak. Now, two key responses or clues to a type 2 threat. If you hear these statements inside yourself, said with great righteousness, and you could be saying it aloud too, it's, this should not be happening. This isn't right. It's not fair. These statements most frequently reflect a fear of the loss of control. Or, if said with great drama, how could you think that about me? How can you treat me that way? These statements generally reflect a fear of abandonment or being unworthy. These are the top two ego concerns: control and belonging. So, what do? As with any fear, own it and breathe. These are always good first steps. Assess and confirm this is a type 2 situation. Next, thank your ego. By now, we know that it is not who we are. So praise it like a well-trained guard dog, because your ego is your tool, not who you are. So thank your ego, bring it to heel, and send it to bed with praise. Remember that Reverend Rafe said that fear never lies? Fear reveals exactly what is operating in our beliefs. Fear is one of the fastest ways to discover our hidden beliefs, those unconscious rules and expectations that govern our life. Fear never lies. So our inner work begins. Look to see what has been threatened. Meditate, journal, talk to a friend or a practitioner. Is it a belief, an expectation based on a belief or a value? Did someone break one of your rules? Watch your breathing. Often we stop breathing, or it becomes really shallow when we're facing an inner conflict. So sit up and breathe. Watch for what you don't want to think about when you start squirming inside yourself. Watch for how you distract yourself when you're looking underneath the surface of a conflict or fear or anger. Breathe. Witness, but not from a place of judgment. Observe. Journal the conversation or have a conversation in your head with your observer using the following prompts. How interesting that fill in the blank. I wonder why. My, that was a strong response. I wonder where that came from. That conversation, gently, with your observer, can uncover what's going on. And finally, most importantly, remember who and whose you are. You are not your ego. You built it as a tool when you were a child to help you be human. But you are a tool user. And you are not a fragile, vulnerable human being. That is not all that you are. You are a spirit, a divine being having a human experience. Again, you are the divine. You are love. You are wholeness living as a human being. This is why we have spiritual practice. We come into this life, and as we learn to be human, as we focus our attention to becoming human, we forget that we really are a pure spirit. Spiritual practice, prayer, meditation, visioning, whatever you do, helps me to reconnect to the whole. This is whose we are. We are the unlimited, living in a time and space ruled human experience. Yeah, we are limited by time and space, but just about any other limitation is a belief that the ego used as a way to be human, to fit in and survive our family and community of origin. But we did not come into this life to simply survive. We came to thrive. And we are not alone, naked and vulnerable anymore. We live in and are surrounded by the love of wholeness that is life itself. And we are privileged, blessed by the community that we belong to, like CSL Davis. The last step, once you remember who and whose you are, is to assess and choose again. In a sense, you are retraining or reshaping your ego. What do you choose to believe about yourself? What do you choose to believe about how the world works? What beliefs are not working for you? And are you ready to let them go? This is a great time to work with a practitioner or take a class. This is the process that transforms type 2 fear into love. So if you're afraid and it's a type 2 fear, admit you're having a reaction, that you are afraid. Thank your ego for alerting you to a potential threat. Breathe. Observe. Have a conversation with your observer. Remember who and whose you are. And assess your beliefs with friends, with a practitioner, or by yourself. But choose the life you want. I want to end this talk with a call and response practice. I'm going to say a line, and I want you to repeat it, but please stay muted or we will all be in chaos. Then I'll give you a second phrase to repeat. There are 7 phrases in all. Okay, ready? If you like, focus on your breathing, close your eyes, and center yourself. Here we go. I am a point of awareness within the life of God. I am a point of light within the mind of God. I am a point of love within the heart of God. I am a point of creativity within the energy of God. I'm a point of joy within the glory of God. I am a point of beauty within the perfection of God. Whatever God is, I am. Whatever God is, I am. And so it is. Thank you.